and then wait 20 and go.
Good evening, everyone. We are so excited to be here with you tonight, and we've got a fun presentation for you. So I hope you're ready to just hang out and talk social media with us. We are, thrilled with this opportunity to chat with you tonight through Barbara's Bookstore. So yay, Barbara's Bookstore. We're so excited. And I mean, independent stores, independent businesses, small businesses, they really need a lot of support right now, especially this year. So we so appreciate you being here tonight to support Barbara's Bookstore, and of course to support us, because we are a small business too. My name is Dr. Sarah Davis, and I am, first and foremost, I am a mom. I have 4 kids. My kids are 10, 8, 5, and 2.5. My little baby is adopted, so I'm also an adoptive mom, and I'm a military wife. So I have had a lot of experience just being a mom, moving around, making friends, all that cool stuff. But I also have a really strong background in education. Mm-hmm. Currently, I teach preschool, and I spend my days playing. Today, we were veterinarians, teaching virtual preschool during this COVID time, which is a really fun escape for me because I'm basically 5 years old in my head. But I also have taught middle school, I've taught elementary school, and I have a doctorate in curriculum and instruction. So it's just been, I love to learn. I can't stop learning. And together, Evie and I have put together this book, which we're going to talk to you about tonight, Modern Manners for Moms and Dads. And specifically, we're going to talk about social media, which is just a giant topic full of really cool and interesting things.
I am Evie Granville. I will always start off by saying I am Sarah's best friend. I'm a mom to 2 girls, a 7 and a 10-year-old, and I live outside of Boston with my kids, my husband, and a little rescue dog and cat. We're that kind of a family. And my background is in education. I was a secondary educator before I became a mom, and then I transitioned into communication. So I have experience in really high-stakes communication environments, leading a team. So that's partly my background. Sarah and I at this point serve as parent educators. Obviously, we are the authors of this book, Modern Manners for Moms and Dads. We have a website. We also have a podcast by the same name. So we would love for you to have an opportunity to find us there if podcasts are something that you do. And really the impetus for this book was that Sarah and I met when we were brand new moms and we were just learning the ropes. And we were constantly finding ourselves in sticky situations when we were out in public with our kids that we had no idea what to do with, because there is no playbook for this stuff. There's no way to prepare for it until now. When we were new moms, we were constantly picking up the phone and saying to each other, you won't believe what just happened to me. Whether it was a blowout diaper in the checkout line at the grocery store, a tantrum that your kids threw at the wedding that you were supposed to attend, there was always something going on that left us feeling like, did I do the right thing? And so we tapped into our background as educators, and we came up with a method that any parent or caregiver, for that matter, can use to balance 3 competing priorities: your needs, because you're a human being and you have needs too, your child's needs, and everybody else's expectations of you when you are out in public with your kids. And I want to provide a little caveat here because, of course, during COVID, people have this instinct to say like, well, there's no etiquette right now. We're not out in public. And that is simply not true. It's just different etiquette. And a lot of it is online, which makes this topic for tonight of sharenting so incredibly important, with so much of our social interaction happening through social media. So before we launch in tonight, again, we want to thank Barbara's Bookstore, and we want to let you know that you have 2 features you can make use of tonight: the chat in the sidebar, and then there's also an ask a question feature. So if something comes up for you and you want to shoot us a question, we are happy to answer those.
All right, so here we go. Oh, and it looks like you get 10% off with the code EVENT if you choose to purchase the book tonight. So one of the chapters of the book is on social media. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. That is not the entirety of the book. That's one chapter. All right, so here's my question for you, and I want you to answer this in the chat because we're going to start here, and this is going to show your age a little bit, but just so you know, I'm going to answer it too. I want to know, what was the very first social media platform that you had a profile on? What was the very first one? And I will tell you, for me, it was MySpace. When I was in college, it was all about MySpace, creating this social media profile on MySpace. And then, of course, along came Facebook, and I didn't add Facebook right away. And then along came Instagram, and then MySpace, says Laura. Woohoo, you and me, MySpace. All right. Evie, what was yours?
It was Facebook. I was a late
God.
bloomer on social media.
So Evie's a little bit younger than me too, so maybe that's why. That's so funny. Okay, so Facebook, 2 votes for MySpace. Here's the thing. We as parents now, we were the first generation to have that opportunity to get to create our online presence. We were the ones who did it for ourselves. We created, what does our brand look like? And back in the early times when this was MySpace or AOL or all that stuff, I'm really dating myself now. We weren't really thinking about brands. We were just like posting stuff, right? We were doing the chat. We had our cute little names. We had our backgrounds. We were playing with it, but we weren't really thinking about a brand. But we got to choose. We grew up around that time where we got to choose. And we are the first generation and the only generation that has this opportunity, where we grew up with not the internet. And then as we got into our teenage and our adult years came the internet, and then came social media. And then we were able to start to craft the first generation of what this is going to look like. Amazing. Very cool. And then when we had kids, it was like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep posting because this is what's happening in my life now. Like, all right, I posted about my vacation to Cancun. I posted about my wedding. Here's my baby. Except at some point along the way, your child became the main character of their own story, not a side character to yours, right? And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that. How do we know where the line is, where we can post of our children and when we just shouldn't because it's not our story to tell? How do we know that? There is a lot of debate about this. There's a lot of questions. People have conversations about what they're going to post on social media and how to make that decision. And some of that is up to you, but there is definitely some etiquette involved, and that is what we're going to talk about tonight. So here's the question. What does the research say about why we share online? Why do we share online? It's really hard to not pick up this phone and start, right? It's so hard. You have to really think about, like, I don't want to do that right now, right? Why do we do it? We do it because we have questions. We do it because we want to feel less alone, because being a parent is lonely. Being a parent is overwhelming. We need validation. We need someone to tell you, like, hey, you did a great job there. Like, way to go putting a Band-Aid on that little child's knee when he fell down and you didn't freak out. Good job, Nobody gives us that validation as a parent. So we share because it makes us feel less alone. In fact, there was a study that says 72% of parents said sharing makes them feel less alone because it's right here. The whole world is at our fingertips. Why wouldn't we use it? It makes us feel better. And there is so much to ask about being a parent. From the moment you want to conceive to the moment your child goes to college, you can type anything in on any social media platform and receive tons and tons of advice. And the interesting thing here is we can curate our network, right? So we can make our friendship, our friends, we can make our groups, we can belong to communities online where we can ask these questions and have this trusted network at our fingertips. So no longer do we have to go to the library and go through books and have this passive experience. Now we can have this interactive experience where we have our trusted network of friends at our fingertips. So, 30 years ago, you're calling your friend and you're getting one opinion. Well, now type it on social media and you have 10 answers in 10 seconds. And now you have to wade through them and decide what is right. But at least you have a lot of opinions. You might start to feel better. Oh yeah, everybody goes through this. Okay, I don't have to worry so much. This is okay. So what do we ask about? We ask about kids' sleep, nutrition, discipline, behavior problems. We ask about daycare. We ask about preschool. We ask about breastfeeding, bottle feeding, all of these super, super intimate questions sometimes also on social media because we feel like it's a safe space. And is that bad? No, it isn't. There have been so many benefits that we have received from having social media. For one, a sense of community. We talk about feeling lonely. This social media gives us a validation. It gives us a sense of community and connection. And guess what? It's actually changed like the healthcare industry a little bit, because we have this peer-to-peer healthcare. We go online and we ask, oh my gosh, this happened to my child. What is this? What is this? And people calm you down. And then you're like, all right, I guess I don't have to call the doctor. Or maybe you do call the doctor, but you say, hey, I just talked to my 400 friends on Facebook and they said this. What do you think? And the doctor's going, why did you do that? You told me. Right? So it helps us. We have this peer-to-peer network. But another really cool thing about social media and the internet, it has actually started to lessen the poverty gap in terms of knowledge. Because everybody, if you have internet, you have the same information as everybody else. So that's really wonderful because it gives everybody a chance to have that information at their fingertips. The only thing they have to have is the internet. Okay, so fantastic. We have all these benefits to social media. We also have a place to put all of our kids' pictures, quotes, adorable things that they did, our story, our birth story, all of those cool things. And then guess what? It's there for us for years. We had some people, some younger moms that we spoke to when we were writing the book who said, of course I'm going to put everything on social media. This is my child's baby book. If I don't, in 20 years when he looks on the internet and sees nothing, he's going to think, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you put everything up? Now I have nothing. Interesting perspective, right? Because for me, as a somewhat older mom, I'm thinking, no, I need to protect them from this. But what happens in 15 years when my kids go, well, Mom, you put nothing on here, like nothing. And I'm like, well, here's your baby book that I made for you. And they're like, no, I wanted it online. So we have all these positive things, right? But of course, there are some pitfalls and we need to be able to balance the positivity things with the pitfalls.
So years ago, before the advent of the internet, before this age of parenting in the age of social media, if we had a funny story to tell about our child, we would just call a friend or call our parents and dish on something that happened with our kids. And it was adorable. And we would get this little moment of sharing the story. And probably it wasn't going to go any further than that. Maybe that person would repeat it to one other person, two other people. But the story sort of stayed where we put it. But now when we go to share something online, we have to ask ourselves the question, am I willing to share this story about my child with the whole world? And maybe you're going to think like, that sounds a little overdramatic. It really isn't, because as buttoned up as we might keep our privacy settings and our security settings on any of these social media platforms, once you post something, somebody can capture it, get a screenshot, save it forever, turn it into a meme. And when we surveyed our audience, we asked them, are you worried about this happening to you? That you might post a photo and people will use it in some way that you hadn't intended, a photo of your child. And they said yes. The majority said yes. This is something that we have in the back of our mind. And that's good. We want to be mindful of that, because when you post that photo, when you post that video, when you tell that little story, it is available to go anywhere and have anything done with it. So that's something we really want to keep in mind. The other thing is the question of the effect that our posts and our sharing is going to have on our child in the long run and in the short run. And we're going to cover that in much more detail a little bit later. So I'll just pause with that for a moment. Because the other pitfall that I want to make sure to address is this false sense of anonymity that some people can have. And we have this sense that we are behind a screen. We are protected from the effects of what we post, what we share. We feel more anonymous. If we put up a picture of our kid and we say we're having trouble with something, we don't really feel like we're sharing it with all the world. But it is the equivalent of going into the town square in the old days and shouting it for the whole town to hear. So we really need to think about it that way, that we want to protect our child's privacy. And also, when we are commenting on other people's business, other people's lives, other people's parenting, we want to make sure that we are using a tone that is kind and respectful, and that is something that we might feel comfortable saying to their face. If you wouldn't say it to their face, you shouldn't write it online either. You just need to think about that. And the last thing is the possibility of oversharing. We love to talk about our kids. We all do. They're great. They're fantastic. They're these amazing little creatures, and they're all ours, and we're so proud of them. But if we go overboard and we overshare and we tell too much, we can really turn people off. And again, with so much of our lives being online right now, we really want to be mindful of creating a balance of what we're sharing and why. So one of the big takeaways we want to make sure you walk away with tonight is to think before you post. Obviously, we're going to hammer that in tonight as much as humanly possible. And one of the things that we want you to consider is the concept of consent, getting consent from your children. Now, as Sarah said, when we start posting photos of a newborn baby, obviously we are not getting consent. We, as their adult, we're making a judgment call about what we're going to share with the world about them. But the fact of the matter is, I love that analogy that Sarah used earlier, that our child is the main character of their own story. They're not some tangential character in our lives, right? So when we post photos of them, we have to every single time think through that someday this is going to be part of their online identity. It's already a part of their online identity. Your child just doesn't know it right now if you have a really little one. But someday they're going to be able to look back at all this stuff. So then it's a question of at what age do you start to try to get consent from a child? Is it 3? Is it 4? Because once you start to have this conversation with a child about, may I post your photo online, then you have to explain to them, what are you doing with it? What's the intention? Where is it going? Who's going to see it? What is the outcome? Just today, I had a conversation with my 7-year-old about, well, if I post this video of you on Facebook, who can comment on it? And she was confused. Can anybody comment on it? Is it just friends and family? And so we had to have a whole conversation. And then the next question becomes, well, did anybody comment on it? And then that's a sticky situation too, because you have to consider the long-term effects for your child of how much information do you want to give them and at what age about how social media works or could work in positive circumstances or the not so positive circumstances. And every time we post something, we are crafting our child's brand on social media. So here's a statistic that I love to give you a sense of how much posting we're doing. 90% of children have been featured on social media by their 2nd birthday. So if you think you are not guilty of this, you probably are. We all need to be thinking really, really carefully because we've all made mistakes. We've all posted a photo and then thought, oh gosh, should I have done that? And that instinct, we need to listen to that instinct for our sake and for our child's sake.
And by the way, it might not even be you that posted. It might be a grandparent, a friend, a babysitter. And that's all etiquette stuff that we're going to get into as well. Because it might not have been you. You might have been like, hey, I'm not doing this. And then somebody else texts you and go, hey, did you know your kid's on social? You're like, what? So yeah, that's another thing.
Actually, throw that into the chat. If you have ever had that experience of maybe posting a photo and then needing to retract it, or having somebody else post a photo and having to go to somebody and say, can you please remove that? Or not wanting to do that, because we've had clients who have come to us with that concern too. How do I broach that topic? Throw that in the chat. We'd love to know that.
Yeah, that's such a fun, sticky situation. Okay, so while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you about the implications of what happens when you put an inappropriate photo of your kid on social media. So let's just talk about what these inappropriate photos mean. I'm going to paint a picture for you. Your child is 2.5 years old and they're peeing on the potty. And you're so proud of them because, hey, potty training is not as fun for the parent as it is for the kid. So when this happens, you are like ready to go with the bells and whistles. Kids on the potty, you snap a picture, you post it because you want that validation. Here we go back to that support. I want the support. Look at me. I've been potty training for 6 months. My child finally peed on the potty. Yay me. But now there's a picture of your child half naked on the potty. And maybe you put the little stickers over their privates, but still they're on the potty and the social media. So it's a little embarrassing. And my question always is this. If you would be okay with someone taking a picture of you on the toilet and posting it on social media, then, it's probably okay. But if this is something that makes you uncomfortable, then don't put a picture of your child doing it. So that goes for like a child in the bathtub. Like, do we want people taking pictures of us in the shower and then posting it on Facebook? Probably not. A child in the bathtub, a child on the potty, a sick child, a child sleeping, all of those like very vulnerable moments that your child doesn't really know, like they don't know that you're posting it. And sometimes things like the bath are adorable. They do the cutest things in the bathtub. They put the little soap, they make Santa on their face. So cute. Text that to your friend. Like, try to refrain from putting that on social media because it's embarrassing. And even if your child is not old enough to understand what you're doing, they are going to see it eventually. And they're going to be like, okay, so why? I mean, we all have photos like that in our baby book, right? Like where your parents will show you the baby book and there's the photo of you taught toilet training and you're like, oh my God, you really had to put this in my baby book? And they're like, oh yeah, it was so great. Well, imagine if that was on the internet for everybody to see and your kid is applying for a job when they're 16. They're like, oh, look at that. Good for you. You know how to use the toilet. Yeah. If you want to celebrate the potty training, do it, but do it with words, not with photos. Maureen says, I encountered many tricky situations as a teacher, parents posting pictures that include children other than their own, and one is a grandparent myself. Yes, for sure. That happens a lot where people post pictures of other people's kids and forget that actually you should ask permission before you do that because the parent might feel uncomfortable with that photo. And there are ways to approach that if you are the parent who feels uncomfortable. So another place, another time where we might snap a photo, and I've seen this a lot, especially in memes, is a child throwing a temper tantrum. Mm-hmm. Child feeling really emotional, a child being angry, throwing something, getting really upset, and it becomes a meme and people post it everywhere and they laugh about it like, oh, reasons my toddler cried today because I didn't give him the purple cup, and there's like a picture of a toddler like really upset. Well, that moment, even though it might be funny to the parent, is actually a really vulnerable moment for the child. They're losing control, they're feeling uncomfortable, they're feeling angry, they're feeling the most big feelings they can feel at age 2 and 3 years old. And yes, their problems are tiny compared to what our problems are as adults because their world is tiny. So for them, the biggest issue is that they didn't get the purple cup, but that is a huge issue when you're 2. So if we put that on social media, we are saying to our kids like, hey, I'm more interested in getting the validation and the likes on how funny this is than actually thinking about what this means to you, this moment that means to you. When your child is having an emotional time with something, they really, really, truly are. So that's a time to be with your child in the moment, text your friend later, have that private conversation, but not throw it online because it's just not fair. And again, if someone were to take a picture of you having an emotional meltdown, because adults do, right? We get angry, we cry, we yell. Someone took a video of that and put it online, you would be like, oh my God, take that down right now. Like I don't want anybody to see that. It's the same thing with our kids. And it really goes back to the fact that your kids are the main character of their own story. So they should be able to choose which vulnerable moments they want to share. Another thing is, your older children getting trouble at school. It's very easy to post that online because we need advice. Hey, oh my gosh, this happened. I really don't know what to do. And this is a place where, hey, the internet could be helpful. It's got, maybe people have also been in this situation. And you might have a very private group or a chat or some kind of group that you're in that would be a very safe space for something like that. But if you're going to post something like that about your child's vulnerabilities in terms of behavior, emotions, anything like that, you really need to make sure that the place you're putting it is a super safe place where people are confidential, where it's a private group, where it can't go anywhere. And even then, you just have to trust that people don't screenshot it and then share it with other people. Mm-hmm. But this is hard because, 20 minutes ago, I told you that people use the internet for validation and support. And now I'm telling you, actually, there are times where you can't ask for support because it's inappropriate. And so that becomes this real weird seesaw. It's like, but I want the help. But I don't want my child to feel embarrassed. And that is really, really hard. And as your children get older, there's this idea of parents who are kind of in that school age time in this extra lonely category because they really can't share as much because their children are old enough to understand what's happening. So this is when you really need that trusted community and network of friends that you can text and feel like you're getting that same kind of support.
So one of the things that Sarah and I are constantly talking about navigating is how much are we telling our children about what we're sharing? Mm-hmm. Now, as Sarah mentioned, she has older children as well as younger children. My kids are 7 and 10. So at this point, they understand if I take a picture of them and I say I'm going to share it, they have a concept of what that means. Are they active on Facebook or Instagram or any of the other social media platforms? No. But they understand that it means that other people will be able to see it. And so I have opted to have that conversation with them. Well, let's look at the platform. Let's see what happens. Let's talk about the ways that we've protected ourselves by really closing in our social circle on certain platforms, making our accounts private. And that conversation I mentioned earlier with my daughter about Who can comment on this video once we post it on Facebook? Is it there for all the world to see? Yes and no, right? So it's something that I have to, as the adult, make a judgment call about. Am I confident enough in my security settings? And not just that, the people in my network, my Facebook friends, am I certain that there's nobody here who's going to do something inappropriate with it? And so I have to make a judgment call and provide my child with as much information as I feel is age appropriate. But of course, once you start getting into living for likes and let's check and let's see how many views and let's see how many comments and how many people hearted my photo. How many people hearted my photo? If we're having to have this conversation with young kids, we are in uncharted territory here. So the more we can think ahead and really try to act responsibly, the better.
You know, the thing is about that too, is that, you know, studies have shown that like you get that rush from all those likes, you know, the
endorphins.
Endorphins. Yes. Thank you. See, this is why we're best friends, because she finishes my sentences. You get the endorphins. So if our kids start to get trained on that, like, oh yeah, I get endorphins for likes, we're in trouble. You know?
I think we just want to hold that off as long as we possibly can, right? It's coming, but as long as we can push it off, the better.
Oh man, I know. Okay. So here's my favorite part of the talk, because we get to talk about the types of people that are online and the different types of personalities that we encounter in our online life. So the funny thing about oversharing is that 75% of parents think that other parents overshare. Oh wait, 75% of parents think that other parents overshare. If you know someone, and you don't have to tell me who, because we're going to be anonymous here, respectful. If you know someone who overshares online, put it in the comments. Put "I do" in the comments if you know somebody who overshares. Because there's lots of different ways of oversharing, right? It's the oversharing like, oh, if my photo of my child 100 times a day, it's telling you way more than you need to know about my doctor's appointment, or my fight with my spouse, or my, you know, the income that I make, or whatever it is. Some people think that the 500 friends they have on social media are the appropriate audience for some of these private, personal things.
So that's just one of the faux pas that we make, right? And how much sharing we do on social media can have a really big effect on our social lives, especially right now in quarantine when all of our interactions are online. We want to be really mindful about what we're sharing and how much, not just about our child's life, but about our own life. If every day at lunchtime I'm posting a photo of my turkey sandwich, people are going to get aggravated with me. So
okay, but here's my question for you, Evie, because here's the thing. I know people are thinking like, I know, but we're supposed to be authentic online. We're not supposed to just post the highlight reel, right? So how can you post honestly but not overindulgently?
Overindulgently. I love the way you described it. I think it is being mindful of what you are trying to gain when you post, right? If you post photo after photo where you are asking people essentially to tell you how adorable your child is, that gets annoying. If you are posting photo after photo, or, you know, post after post about how you're having trouble with your child and you're in a really, you know, tough space and you need advice and you need help, that might get tiring for people as well. So there's got to be like a little bit of mindfulness about variety and then frequency of posting too, right? If you're posting 4 times a day, that's a lot. People might start to unfollow you. There are people in our lives who love and care about us, but the way that we post on social media does have an effect on their perception of us. It is not just our interactions online. It is a little bit more complex because this stuff spills over into the real world. Maureen says, I do. One friend comes across as doing too much bragging about her child. I really like her, but try to tune her post out at this point. It's just too much. That's exactly the thing. We all have people in our social circles who just take it maybe a step too far. And it is not something that you necessarily can bring to their attention. But if we are mindful of it ourselves, we can try to reel it in, because I think we all have a tendency to want to share a lot, and you don't want it to veer into bragging. You can brag to your best friend. I can brag to Sarah. I can brag to my parents. I can brag to my husband, but you got to keep it really honed in.
But I think it's so funny too, because, you know, for such a long time, social media was all about the highlight reel. Like, oh, post all the best things, post the most beautiful picture. Don't post a picture of your messy house. Don't post a picture of the uneaten plate of gorgeous food that you made your child, you know. Yeah. Only post the best things. And that's not what we're saying. You know, we're not saying only post the highlight reel, because that's not real. It's not, you know, we're just saying be careful what you curate, and just be, a variety is good. Not overdoing something is good, but it's okay to ask for help. Mm-hmm. You just have to be careful on the channel that you're asking for help. Make sure that you're putting it in a place that's extremely secure, especially if your kids are in the question that you're asking, because you're really asking a question about them, not about yourself, you know.
So a couple of other faux pas that we see commonly come up on social media and that we receive questions about would be things like a passive aggressive tone, an unkind intention. So really thinking about parenting is something that is sacred and delicate, and people are very touchy about it. People have very strong views about things, and we can sort of jump to conclusions about what we think we see online. And I know I have been guilty of it too, seeing something that I thought was dangerous maybe. Years ago, when I was a new mom, I had a friend who posted a photo of her baby in a car seat, and the straps were very loose. And that is just something that is a personal issue for me. It makes me so scared and uncomfortable. So I took it upon myself to send her a private message that said, listen, I just feel like I have to say this, like, please forgive me. You know, this is something that's like a big deal for me. Car seat safety, I'm a nut about it. So lead with a little bit of self-deprecating stuff. But I noticed that the straps were really loose in that photo. Can you just ease my worries and tell me that he's, you know, strapped in more tightly on a normal basis? And she, you know, this was a close friend. And so she knew I was coming from a good place. And she knew I had approached her privately with a delicate tone. And she said, yeah, that we just loosened the straps because the car was stopped and we were snapping a photo. Whew, thank goodness. You know, and looking back on it now as a more experienced parent, I'm not sure I would have approached her about that, because that's a private issue. You know, it's a safety issue, but on the other hand, you're challenging somebody else's judgment. So these are the sorts of conversations that are best to happen privately. Like, I wouldn't, you know, I shouldn't have commented on that photo in a public way. That would really be looking like I was trying to step on somebody's toes. It's tone, it's intention, it's the connection you have with this person. How close is your relationship? These are all factors we want to take into account. The other thing, Sarah, this is one that Sarah loves so much. Photos of other people's kids.
Oh my God. Okay. Can you put a picture of someone else's child on your social media channel? This is a cut and dry answer. The answer is no. And I know some of you are like, what? Are you kidding me? Okay. The answer is no, unless you have explicit permission. So can I go on a play date, take a picture of 5 kids and post it on my page? Oh, look at how much fun I had. No, I cannot. No, I cannot. Why can I not do this? A, because I don't know what the privacy of those other people are. Maybe they didn't want anybody to know that they went on a play date today. Maybe I'm hurting the feelings of the person across the street I didn't invite who happens to see it on my social media page. Maybe there's somebody who has a job where they have to stay private and they don't put their kids on social media. So you don't know what other people's philosophies are, and you don't know why they have them. So if you have a picture you want to share, it's really appropriate to send the picture. Hey, I have this picture. It's super cute. Can I post it? And you might get the answer with, yes, but please don't tag me. Or yes, go ahead and tag me. Or you can put it on your story, but don't put it on your page because the story disappears supposedly. And the page is more permanent. So it is very, very important that you ask people before you do that. Because you never know their reasons for saying no. And, you know, that goes for parties. And this is another thing, like Maureen was saying, she's a teacher, is if you go to, and we may not be doing this in COVID, but if you go on a field trip with a class, if you go to a class party and you post and snap and post, you can't do that because there's actually rules against putting kids in classes in schools on social media without explicit permission of the parent. Mm-hmm. So these are some things that we just need to keep in mind. Birthday parties, you know, of course we want to share birthday parties. We worked so hard. We made the cake. We did the decorations. It's a beautiful party. Of course we want to share it. It may be that you share just a photo of your child in the decorations, or the before pictures before everybody gets there, or maybe a picture of her and one of her friends, so that you're not saying like, oh, all these kids were here, but and you weren't invited. It's kind of the equivalent of handing out, 6 invitations at preschool and not 20, and then doing it in front of everybody so everybody can see who's not invited.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes this idea of etiquette where we just haven't thought about it necessarily because it's new. We wouldn't go into a preschool class and hand out, hey, you come over here. 5 of you are invited to my party, but the rest of you are not. But that's kind of what we're doing. If we post a picture of 6 kids at a party on social media and all of our kids' friends from the class see it and go, oh, well, that's weird.
Well, and this book is written for kids ages 0 to 5 too, right? So as you creep into that 5 and school age territory, you do get into those school issues, right? So the relationships at the school are also something that you need to maintain through good social media practices. So you would never want to go online and say you're having trouble with a teacher. Go to the teacher and speak to the teacher directly. You would never want to badmouth the principal or the school itself, because these are delicate relationships that, while we feel like we have some anonymity on social media, we feel like we have some distance because we're doing it online, not at the school itself. You're not picketing in front of the school. It is still going to get back to people. The conversations will become live, in person, not online sorts of things. So we want to be very careful about delicate relationships and maintaining them. And yes, Maureen says children also see these posts, which is so, so true. Mm-hmm. Kids at that school age are going to see and hear, even if they don't read the post themselves, they're going to hear about it from their parents in conversation at a friend's house. It's very delicate.
So as you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, is this book a list of black and whites? Do this, don't do this, do this, do this. And I will tell you, it absolutely is not. And this is where etiquette became very layered for us. Because as we were writing this book and as we were creating this philosophy, it was like, okay, well, yeah, this is not okay, except it is okay here, except it's not okay here. So how do we create this framework where we can explain the layers of etiquette? If you have ever taken the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram, you kind of know that you take a quiz, you get a perspective, or you get a profile, and that helps determine why and how you make the decisions that you do. We did a very similar thing in creating a framework called the Solar System Parenting Framework that helps you figure out why you make the decisions you do when you're parenting in public. And that includes social media, because that is, right now especially, that is our public space in social media. So why do some of us might feel like, when you heard that thing about the birthday party, some of you listening might have thought, oh my gosh, I never would do that. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to make anybody feel bad. Some of you might have been listening and saying, you're crazy. If I have a party, I'm going to put everything on social media of my party. I think you're wrong. I think that that's okay. And guess what? Those 2 reactions are 2 of the parenting perspectives, 2 out of the 3 parenting perspectives that we have created.
Mm-hmm. So what we did was, over many years of answering etiquette questions that came into us on our website, listener questions on our podcast, we discovered that there were those 3 competing priorities that I mentioned at the start: your child's needs and wants, your needs and wants, and the expectations of society more generally, the people around you at any given point in time. And these 3 perspectives, as we call them, everybody has some sort of visceral perspective that they lean into. Everybody has one that they tend to identify with. And so what we did was we created a quiz on our website, evieandsarah.com/quiz, where you take a 3 to 4 minute quiz, you answer some questions about how would you handle this situation, and it spits out a result for you. You are either a crescent, somebody who naturally prioritizes your child's needs, a constellation, like me, somebody who tends to prioritize society's expectations of you, or a fireball, somebody who knows that if you don't fill up your own cup and you don't take care of yourself, you are no good to anybody else. That's our fireball parent. So this is another interesting way that we can look at how people behave on social media, because we can look at social media behaviors through the lens of these 3 perspectives.
Right. So that was one of the chapters in the book. But as I said to you in the beginning of the talk, there are tons of chapters in this book on public parenting, on school and relationships, on making friends, on keeping your home. And you read the book, based on your perspective. So the quiz is in the beginning of the book. You take the quiz and then you read the book through that lens, and it will help you learn so much about yourself, about your parenting perspective and style, and about your partner's perspective and style, and about your friend's perspective and style, so that you really understand why people act the way they do in public and how that affects the kids and the adults around them.
Mm-hmm. One good example would be that, when it comes time to take that photo at a birthday party, if I'm the hostess and I'm feeling really excited, my kid, I just threw them this great party, my child's so happy, it's the 5th birthday, we've got all the balloons, the kids are all gathered up for a photo, and now I want to post it on social media. That might be something that I might viscerally say, it's fine. I mean, it's a party, I'm posting a photo, what's the big deal? But for somebody like Sarah, who is a crescent, who naturally prioritizes and wants to be protective of her children, that might not be okay with her.
Right, exactly. So the book is Modern Manners for Moms and Dads. We have a Facebook group too called Talking Modern Manners for Moms and Dads. So you can kind of go in there and chat with everybody. And of course, Evie said we also have a podcast. The podcast is called the same thing. Really don't have to think that hard. Modern Manners for Moms and Dads, and that's all you have to remember. Are there any questions about anything that we talked about tonight, or even about the quiz, about the fireball? I know we just kind of threw that at you at the beginning, at the end, but it's in the book, Fireball, Constellation, and Crescent. So if you have any questions, we are definitely here to answer. Maureen says, I found your book so enlightening. The parenting perspectives have helped me understand the motivations of other parents' decisions as a teacher as well. Fantastic.
That's wonderful. While we're waiting for, I know typing in the questions, you're doing it in the chat, and you're so, okay, wait a minute, I need a moment to compose my thoughts. In the meantime, I'm going to put Sarah on the spot because I love to do this. And I'm going to throw out one of the most common questions that we get, which is, how on earth do I tell someone to take down photos of my child? Because this came up with one of our coaching clients who was struggling with this situation within her family.
Yes, this happens. This happened a lot to me. It doesn't happen anymore because my friends know not to do it. But this happened to me for a while, where people would, again, it was the play date thing. We go on a play date, they post a picture. Oh my gosh, how cute. And I'm actually very private. I know that makes no sense to you right now because I'm speaking to the computer, but I'm actually a very private person, especially with my kids, and they're like this, and I don't want everything online all the time. So I would have to call my friends, and I totally would do this and say, like, hey, we had an awesome time today. I'm going to have to ask you to take that photo down, please. Or I would text them, and it would not be a question. It would not be a, can you please? It would be like, I would like for you to take that photo down in the next, as soon as you can, please. Because I felt like if I asked it a question, it was like an option, and it really wasn't. I really, really needed them to take the photo down. And a couple of times, everybody did it, but a couple of times it was like, oh, why? It's like, well, just because I don't want, I like to decide what photos go online. That's my job. That's my decision. I'm sorry. I'm not comfortable with it. So I had to have a bunch of those conversations, please take the tag off. I really don't want to be tagged in this photo, or please take that photo down. It's really adorable, but I just don't want the pictures up there. And now people don't ask me anymore because they know, but I think it's awkward. And I think now, maybe 10 years ago, people were more relaxed about it. But now in the last 2 or 3 years, people have gotten very stringent about their boundaries on social media. And so it's even more important now more than ever to ask permission first, because you don't know why people would say no, but everybody has their own personal reason. And I don't want people to feel awkward, like, oh, I can't do that. And if you're a constellation, you probably would feel awkward. Evie doesn't like to answer this question because she's a constellation and she wouldn't do that. Even though she would not want the picture up there, it would be really hard for her to say to take it down. Me being a crescent, being that ultra protective parent, for me, I'm like, take it down. No.
Well, and this is where having that understanding of people's perspectives can be really valuable, because in a situation just like that, I'm going to call my friend who's the crescent and say, what's the language I need to use? What's the best way for me to handle this? Am I out of line to think that this is a photo that I should ask to be taken down? And she's going to say to me, you're not, follow your gut. This is what you say. And so we can workshop some of these things, right? Let's talk through this for a minute. Let's act it out. I'll be me and you be the other person. And that is definitely the benefit of being able to know that you have other friends in your life who can sort of balance you out in that way.
Ooh, here's a question. Please speak to grandparent online etiquette. Most of us are not digital natives. I see many of my contemporaries posting grandchild pics. Is that okay? Is it okay?
Boy, that's complicated because, I mean,
Is it complicated?
So here's the thing. When it's a grandparent relationship, if it's a friend, the friend has no say whatsoever about what happens with that child. When we're talking about a grandparent, I do think it is more layered and more complicated because this grandparent has a stake in the child's well-being. So if you are the parent and you go to a grandparent and say, hey, take that photo down, they might read it as you weren't being careful, you weren't being safe about about protecting my child online. And I think that what Maureen is saying is really wise, that there's this element of us being the generation that has sort of had to learn to navigate these online experiences, whereas there are other generations with grandparents and even great grandparents coming into play who have not experienced it in the same way that we have with raising kids in the digital age. So I think it's just a little bit more complicated. Not to say that the outcome is any different, but the conversation needs to have a different tone, I think.
Okay, I'll give you that. The conversation can have a different tone, but the end game is the same. You got to ask permission. And I do know some grandparents that have gotten in a little trouble with their kids because it's like, I posted this photo, and then, the kids are like, what are you doing? I never post photos of my kids online. And they're like, I didn't know that. I thought this was okay. I just wanted to share with my friends.
Yeah.
And, there may be a platform where that is okay. It may be that the child doesn't do it, but you, because you are an older person and have friends of that, it's a smaller group, maybe it's okay. But I think you definitely have to ask permission. And yes, you have to adjust the tone for sure. Intentions are always good. Yeah, no, I know. That's true.
So, and the last thing, as questions are coming in, the last thing I'll put Sarah on the spot about.
Oh, my goodness.
Is this question of, what is your social media philosophy with your own kids, your big kids? How do you talk to them or not about social media and what you're posting and getting consent?
So, okay, my kids, my older two are 10 and almost 8. They don't really know yet what social media is. They are at the age, though, where they'll tell me, like, I'll say, oh, can I take a picture? You're so cute. And they'll be like, no, I don't want you to. Or they'll say, who are you going to send it to? And I'll say, well, I'm going to send it to Evie. And like my oldest son just got glasses. And I was like, oh my God, those are so cute. I have to send, and he goes, no, because I know you're going to send it to people. Wait, I need to put on my outfit first. So he got himself ready. And then he said, who are you going to send it to? I said, Evie and your grandparents. And he said, see, look, Evie, you're in the category of my parents and my husband's parents, Evie and the grandparents. And he was like, okay, that's fine. But if I'm going to post something on Facebook, I might say to them, hey, this like adorable photo from Thanksgiving or something, I'm going to post online so that people can see it. Is that okay? But I think I put pictures of my kids on Facebook or Instagram, never Instagram, actually. Yeah. Facebook maybe once a month. I'm very particular about what photos go on there and how many. And as I said in the beginning of the talk, I don't know if this is a bad thing, because maybe in 10 years, my kids are going to be like, why didn't you post anything? There's nothing here.
Yeah.
So I do have I still do hardcover photo books every year so that they have that as like memories. But I'm very particular. If people put pictures of my kids online, I am the first one on the phone saying, like, please take that down. I'm not comfortable with it. But I have gotten a little more comfortable with stories because I think they disappear. So if somebody puts a photo of my child on their story and doesn't tag me, then I'm okay with that.
This is a lot to navigate. It's very complex. We're talking about which platform are you using? Yep. How buttoned up do you have it? Like, is your Instagram private or public? And is it a post or is it a story? Yep. Then we could get into, is it a reel? Is it something that might go viral and get shared a bajillion times? It's very complicated. And the idea is that as we're navigating this, we want to be mindful of how what we post online is going to have a short and long-term effect on our kids and on our own social connections, on our own social circle, how it might affect us in the real world. And I think that's just good general life advice too, no matter your age, whether you're a parent or not.
I'm not letting you off the hook here. What's your, so you thought, she thought she was going to change the subject. What is your social media philosophy?
Well, I sort of shared that, just today I have a little one who's selling Girl Scout cookies, and the Girl Scouts are encouraged to create a video and post it online and send out a link for people to purchase.
Oh, that's
their
interesting.
cookies. Yes. So we had a conversation about, is this something you want to do? Because I'm surely not going to force a child to do this. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a question of, who are we going to share it with and how? So then we had a conversation about, it will go on Facebook. Who will be able to see it? It's a pretty close circle. And I've been very deliberate about who I allow into my Facebook world as a friend. And then she started asking questions herself. Well, can anybody comment on it? That's a really good question. That's a great question to have. And so we talked about that. And as we get into the nuances, I have to at each step make a judgment call about how much information do I want my child to have about this? How much do I want to explain now? And I am erring on the side of more information rather than less. And who knows if that's the right way to go? I mean, Sarah and I are just taking two different strategies here. And 10 years from now, there will be some book written on which one was the correct one. But we're doing what feels right for our family and for our kids, and, saying a prayer in the meantime.
And that's what, I think that's the main takeaway today too, is that there are going to be many personal decisions that you make along the way here. And we're not here to tell you how to do those things and what decision to make. Everybody's going to make a different decision. What we're here to do is talk to you about the benefits, the costs, and the etiquette behind social media and parenting.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we do want to thank Barbara's Bookstore once again for having us tonight. This was such a fun opportunity to talk sharenting with you. This is a really layered and complex topic, and it gives us a lot to think about. We would love to be able to continue the conversation with you. You can find us on Facebook. Our Facebook group, which is where we hang out the most, is Talking Modern Manners for Moms and Dads. We're on Instagram at Evie and Sarah. You can pick up a copy of our book, Modern Manners for Moms and Dads, from Barbara's Bookstore, and they're offering participants tonight a 10% discount, so thank you very much for that. And don't forget, we also have a podcast by the same title, Modern Manners for Moms and Dads.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.